Howdy ho! Here we are in the new year with the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour. Coming to you with our very first show. We got a high-balling train show tonight. Yeah, trains. I come from a town, Denison, Texas, where I was born and raised, and it was a train town. And so I've kind of grown up loving the whole idea of trains, the locomotive power and the whole romance of it, and including the romance of trying to get out of towns like Denison, Texas, which I managed to do. But it's still a great town. And, the thing about trains is that they're musical. You don't hear a lot of songs written about I-35. But there are endless train songs, the Wabash Cannonball, the Chicken Bone Special, and et cetera. And here's one. Here she comes. Look at her roll. There she goes, eating up coal. Watch her fly, hugging the rail. Let her bye, bye, bye. She's the Fireball Mail. What a great song. Well, we don't have a mail train for you tonight, but we've got a female Fireball to be with us, and that is Zephyr Teachout. A friend of mine for some time now, but a friend of all of ours, a feisty fighter for working class folks against the greedheads and boneheads who are in charge and ruining our country. And Zephyr, we welcome you to be with us on this terrific Facebook Live program tonight. Zephyr comes to us from East Harlem, I believe. Is that right?
That's right. And I am a fool for a lonesome train, as Ben Harper would say. I love my train songs.
Yeah. We don't do normal introductions here.
Okay.
but that is so, and we want to welcome, by the way, our Free Speech TV folks from all around the country. The beauty of Free Speech TV is that not only is it in Denver and Detroit and Dallas and cities, but it's also out there in Birmingham and Boise and Baton Rouge and Bug Tussle, Oklahoma, and places like that. We are in the in-between places as well as in the center places. And by the way, we invite you all to get a hold of. Come in and get a hold of the hightowerlowdown.org weekly emails, because we can connect you up with action and stories that you're not hearing in the establishment media. And so to know what's really going on, you've got to stay low down. And here we are tonight with the Lowdown Happy Hour. And I'm kicking it off, Zephyr, with a Save the World brew, a Saison Ale from Marble Falls, Texas. And they give all of their profits to small, to independent people fighting to save the world, environmental groups, and et cetera. What are you drinking?
I have a Fat Tire Amber Ale, and although I didn't check beforehand, I'm pretty sure it's owned by one of the two beer companies that own basically the entire beer industry and allow independent beer to exist, kind of like, let them exist just so people feel like there's competition in the industry. But I'm having a Fat Tire. Cheers.
Well, it's a good choice because I happen to know that brewery and I've visited it before, and it is a worker-owned brewery. It is still an independent brewery owned by workers.
I did not know
in Fort
that.
Collins, Colorado. Yeah, so you made a great choice. But you're raising.
Even better about it.
Your comment is raising the very topic of this evening, which is monopoly power. Zephyr Teachout is presently a law professor out in Fordham at Fordham University. She's also activist in all kinds of activities, but has run for political office in New York State and done extremely well. Run for Congress, running more recently for the Attorney General's position, and she has an appeal that goes across parties. And across most lines, in fact, because she talks about power, not just symbolic issues, but who has power and what are they doing with it, and who are they running over to extend that power. So that's why we are loving to have Zephyr Teachout with us tonight. And Zephyr, by the way, is not only a lawyer, but she also is an actress. She did acting in New York State. You grew up where? Up in Vermont, is that right?
Yeah, I grew up in right on the border between Norwich and White River Junction, Vermont. So, speaking of train towns, White River
Yes,
Junction is a big train town, and
Yeah.
both for passenger and freight. But I grew up in a town about 2,000 people, and now live in a place where if I look out my window, I can see about 2,000 people, or the lights from 2,000 people's
Right. Yeah.
homes.
Right.
So I never quite get over the dissonance.
Well, lawyering and acting are not opposite professions, really. I've known a lot of trial lawyers here in Texas, for example, Racehorse Haynes and Warren Burnett, and some of the great fighters here who are terrific actors in a courtroom in presenting a case and making that case known to just regular people, because that's what you're doing when you're appealing to a jury. So you have to learn how to talk to people. And you are one of the best at that. And you have been a champion on the issues of antitrust, which is really about corporate power, monopolies, running roughshod over ordinary folks, over consumers, over workers, over the environment, over every aspect of our lives. And why do we allow that to happen? Well, Zephyr Teachout has written a book called Break 'em Up, and that's a start. And most recently, she has written an article that appeared in the New Republic entitled Blueprint for a Trust-Busting Biden Presidency. So here we are, Zephyr. We got Joe Biden. It was not everybody's first choice, but there he is. And he was the way to get the Orange Menace defenestrated from the White House. And we have done that. But that is only step one, right, of what we have to do as a progressive movement.
Yeah, and it's it could not be a more important moment. And that can feel strange to say, because you may feel like, wait, aren't we done with important moments? We finally got rid of Trump. But both as a matter of politics and as a matter of dealing with the incredible depression and suffering and abuse that people are dealing with right now, it is really urgent that we take this moment and build a progressive movement to pressure Biden and Harris. And we can agree or disagree, but we have a special responsibility to take the question mark that is the Biden administration. I mean, Joe Biden has wanted to be president his entire life. We do not know who Joe Biden is when he is president, right? We just know what he's like when he wants to be president. And his own economic policy, there's a real mystery there. And that mystery can be maddening, but it also means there's a real opportunity. This is not Larry Summers charging in there. This is a guy with a big question mark. And I think one of our jobs is just to show the possibility, the power of the presidency, the way that our economy could work differently. And I mean, just in the last few weeks, you've seen the power of progressive organizing. Biden coming out today being very clear that he will be pushing for $2,000 checks if we win Georgia. He wasn't saying that 2 weeks ago. That came ground up. And I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about the details, but when it comes to the power of the presidency, it is at its apex when it comes to antitrust policy. In agency after agency, whether you're talking agriculture or the Federal Trade Commission, which you haven't thought about nearly enough. Not you, Jim. You, if you're listening, you certainly thought about it.
Too much about it.
Or the DOJ, right? But that these are agencies that really have the power to structure power. You talk about power, and for 40 years, we have allowed president after president to get away with convincing us that antitrust is just this small little technical thing for economists who are specialists, not one of the most fundamental democratic small d tools that we have to use if we want to govern ourselves.
And in fact, something that ordinary people all across the country, without knowing each other, are confronting because it's overwhelming them. Tell us about in your book, I believe it is. You have a piece about the taxi driver and the chicken farmer. Tell us about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's so powerful about anti-monopoly right now is it's not coming from the top down, it's coming bottom up. People get it. They see what's happening in their own lives. And when I set out to write this book, I didn't think I would end up talking to people so much about depression and anxiety, but I will tell you that one of the things that happens in a monopolized economy, just when you have a tyrant who's stepping on your neck, is that you not only get poor, but you feel out of control, a kind of rational paranoia. So I'm going to start with the chicken industry because I think it's one of those industries that even if people have been urban all their life, they feel like, oh, I understand how that works. Their eyes don't glaze over the way it does some kind of areas of work where it feels mysterious. 40, 50 years ago, if you were a chicken farmer or any farmer, you had choices in terms of how you would get your chicken on somebody else's plate. Because of changes in the law. This isn't magic where the market just goes off and works on its own. It's not some organic beast just operating in a magical way. This is political policy choices made by Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton and others. Distributors in the chicken industry consolidated. And so now if you're a chicken farmer, you basically look to see who's your local lord. And if it's Tyson says, hey, I'd love to take your chicken to somebody else's table. But you, by the way, have to take out the loan for the chicken house, $1 million loan for the chicken house. You go bankrupt if there's a problem. And the only way in which I will take your chicken is if you do everything I say. Follow the feeding schedule I say, use the feed I say, use the medicine I say, use the eggs that I tell you to use. Do not experiment without checking on me. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to pay you a different amount every month. And I'm not going to tell you how much your neighbors are making, and you aren't allowed to talk to your neighbors or you break a contract and you're kicked out of the system. So these chicken farmers used to make, as all farmers did, closer to like 40 cents for every dollar spent on food, and now they're making 15 cents. I mean, this is a 35-cent per dollar squeeze. It's a theft. I mean, in the 1890s, people understood. They called monopoly theft. There's a reason it's a criminal. The Sherman Act is a criminal statute. So Tyson is stealing from farmers, and it's stealing by becoming a chokehold, by using surveillance, and then by treating farmers differently and playing them off against each other. Now, you know who else is doing the same thing? Uber. When you talk to Uber drivers, they are also, if you want to be a driver, great, but you have to use the app. And it sounds like, oh, it's an app technology. And there's a tendency to look at technology as again, magical, like operating on its own. They're not doing anything magical. They're using a feudal business model. It's nothing new about the business model. And to say, yeah, if you want to drive for Uber, you own your car, you are liable, but you have to go through our app. And by the way, we're going to pay you a different amount than your neighbors. You aren't going to know how much you're paid, and we're going to take a higher and higher percentage every year. And in both cases, there's massive depression, there's massive instability, and the wages are low. And the reason I found it so important to tell these stories together is that people are often like, okay, what are the rural problems? What are the urban problems? But what we have is we have a power problem, and they're using the same technique in the cities and the countries to steal from people, step on their feet. And one final thing, Jim. They're stepping on people's necks, and they're also being clear that you cannot speak out against them.
Yes.
Because as the farmers learned, it's really important. As the farmers learned, there was this brief moment in the Obama administration where people thought, Obama's going to do something about this. And they held a series of hearings all around the country. Farmers were so scared to speak up because they were scared that if they spoke up, they would get punished. And there's several journalists who've reported on this. I've talked to farmers myself. But they said it's worth it if Obama will do something. And two things happened. One is they were retaliated against, and Obama didn't do anything.
Right.
And
the
so
guy
they've
that he had in
cut out
charge,
farmers' tongues.
and the guy that he had in charge of this, Tom Vilsack, was the agriculture secretary, who made a serious effort to go out and talk to those farmers and to bring this issue to the forefront. And then the White House lawyers clamped down, and the economists who were running the White House at the time clamped down, and Vilsack was shut down, and then he gave up. And in fact, at the in the second administration of Obama, he offered to resign. He said, because there are days I have nothing to do. Nothing to do. You have a monopoly crisis out there. 97% of the chickens that we eat come from this factory system that Zephyr Teachout has just described. 97% of it controlled by primarily three corporations: Tyson Foods, which she's mentioned, JBS, which is owned by Brazilians, and Smithfield, which is owned by the Chinese. These three global conglomerates control the market. And so it's no surprise then, as we reported in the Hightower Lowdown a year or so ago, that a $29 bucket of fried chicken, $29 bucket, KFC, say, $29 bucket. The people who raise the chicken get 58 cents out of a $29 bucket of chicken. The rest of it goes to those conglomerates and to the retailers and the middleman system that profits from farmers by farming farmers, and that is exactly the system that we're facing. So that's what we have to take out and do it now. 2021, not 2022, 2024. Now is the time. I know people want to say, "Oh my God, they're groaning." We work so hard to get this orange menace out of the White House, and now you're saying we got to go back out there. Well, yes, because now is the best time to talk to people, because you can go on the porches and you can have conversations with people in red and blue areas, people in Republican and Democratic household, people in rural as well as urban households, and have the exact same conversation about who has power and how they're using that power to deal with us. So we can't just crank back in the lazy boy now and do 12-ounce elbow bends like we're doing here tonight. But get out there now, door to door. And there are groups that are doing this. So it's not something you have to invent. You can team up with People's Action, with the Georgia Voters Project. We have the election taking place in Georgia tonight in runoff for 2 Senate seats, not because of who the candidates are, but because the Georgia Voters Project, organized by Stacey Abrams, went out and for 10 years has been organizing these door-to-door, deep canvassing type conversations to have with people and showing people that they have a connection, whether they understand it or not, whether they have been led to believe that they're enemies or not, that they in fact have something together. So there's the Poor People's Campaign coming along, the Highlander Center, Food and Water Action. There's so many groups that are out there. And this is a popular issue, Zephyr, and that's something that you bring out so strongly. Talk about this. This is not something that is far more popular than Trump is, far more popular than Biden is, far more popular than Congress is, or the issues themselves.
It's hugely popular. You mentioned National People's Action, and George Gale talks. They do a lot of really incredible deep canvassing at National People's Action, and when you sit down and talk to people, say, who did this to me? And it's something Democrats need to do a lot better job of. And I'm a Democrat, so I don't say those Democrats. I say me, this Democrat. Who did this to me? Who put me in this position where I am? My wages have been stagnant for years. And answering that question and explaining, but also listening to show people actually know who's doing it to them. They know when all the local stores in town shut down because Home Depot's in the area and they're underselling until all the stores shut down. They actually have a deep understanding of what power does. And I just want to say one other thing about Georgia, by the way. John Ossoff is an anti-monopolist. And, he may not line up with you on every, I say you broadly, on every progressive issue, but it's another example. There's interesting alliances. Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, all of them, serious anti-monopolists. They don't line up on other areas, in other areas.
Cory Booker, for God's sake. Cory Booker from New Jersey is standing up on this monopoly issue.
And a lot of people are just silent. A lot of lawmakers are just silent. But on the right is where it gets really interesting, is that you see Republican support for taking on big companies. For instance, we did some polling recently for a president taking on big companies. Basically the same, and in some cases a little higher than Democratic support. This is not one of those issues where you say, well, we got 80% of Democrats and 30% of Republicans, so we can cobble it together. This is a deep understanding that this is a threat to freedom and equality. But the other reason it's important, Jim, is we need relief. People need relief. And you may not think, oh, antitrust is a way to get cash in people's pockets. But I'll give you a recent example. Apple was sued recently, basically for taking too high a percentage from developers, right? They sit there at the narrowest point in the path and say, oh, yeah, you're welcome to use Apple. We're just charging you 30%, just like Tyson and the chicken farmers, except it's 30%, not even higher. After the lawsuit, they actually changed the fees they charged. And that was money right back in the developers' pockets away from Apple. Even bringing the lawsuit, they haven't won the lawsuit. They're not even at the trial level of the lawsuit. Bringing the lawsuit basically made Apple realize they've got to stop stealing so much. So if you have Biden out there, we need it for relief now. We need it because we have a power problem. We need it because we have an inequality problem. But we also need it because if we want Democrats to win 4 years from now, standing still in a tsunami is not a way to win. Showing that you are strong against the companies that are ripping people off and abusing people, that is popular. And it's a flex of power to say, I understand that the best part of the Democratic Party is standing up against those middlemen who steal from me. Not for who steal from the little guy. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that for labor, and I'm going to do that for small businesses. And we are not going to have a country run by Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Bayer, Monsanto, and conglomerates in every area. I mean, that Biden's own lifetime shows the trajectory of what happens when you allow consolidation.
People don't care whether Democrats win or Republicans win. They want to win. It's time for the people to win. And that means you've got to take on this corporate power because they are now our rulers. They have been ensconced, as you indicated, by not just the two Bush regimes and the Trump regime, but by the Obama and Clinton for sure, but before that. So we've not had a party that goes out as an institution, as a political entity, and says, we're on your side and we're going to take on this power. And, we've had this fight before. It's not like this is new. You go to the 1870s with the populist movement itself rising up, not just to take on monopolies. They were very strong about that. That was what was crushing farmers and manufacturers, the workers in the manufacturing industries as well. They teamed together, black and white teamed together in the 1870s. And then, but not only did they take on the monopolies, but they also created a cooperative commonwealth to create a new economic channel that would allow workers and farmers and ordinary people, small business people, to get access to credit that they control, to get access to markets that they control, to et cetera, down the line. And that's the kind of approach I think that we have to take today. And it's a structural approach. These are not separate issues. Criminal justice, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, all of these things come down to question of power. And we have to form a new social contract in America that embodies all of this, that brings all of these interests in together to confront this corporate power and say, no, you're not going to be in charge. We, the people, are going to be in charge. I understand from Deanna, the off-camera person, Deanna, the voice of God, that we have some folks who want to talk to us. Hello, Deanna.
Hey, y'all. Just wanted to give shout outs to so many people watching from so many different parts of the country. And you know that this is my personal favorite part of every episode, but we've got Massachusetts. We've got 2 different places in upstate New York. We've got my hometown, Binghamton, New York, Central New York, and we've also got North Country representing Canton, New York. We've got Maine, Great. Iowa City, got some folks up in Portugal. What are you doing awake? But hey, we love to have you here. We got Worcester, Ohio. I think the most important question that's come up for both of you is, what can everyday people do to put this pressure on the administration? How do we go about this?
Zephyr, go ahead.
Well, Jim was just talking about the 1870s and the powerful cross-racial farmers and small proprietors organizing that was happening in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. During that time, there were antitrust leagues all around the country. The American Antitrust League, local antitrust leagues. And what you see in the beginning of, and this is, Shakespeare in 30 seconds, so we're taking out a lot, but what you see in the beginning of the 19th century is the populists and progressives, leading white populists and progressives, really abandoning the powerful cross-racial organizing they had done. So I think what we have to do is take the positive, the antitrust league organizing, but be very clear that we need a third Reconstruction, that we are not going to allow for the consolidation of power, illegitimate power, consolidation of illegitimate power based on monopolies or based on race. And those are often deeply, deeply connected. So actual local antitrust leagues, we don't have that right now. You may think, oh, I don't like big corporations, but when is the last time you heard about people protesting outside the FTC, making sure that the DOJ and the FTC hear it? This is one of those areas where grassroots noise, you don't need to be an expert in antitrust policy to say, no more big mergers, and let's break up these big companies that are crushing us. So I think one of the most violent successes of Reagan and his California wrecking crew was convincing people that antitrust was not their business. It wasn't about democracy, and that you did not belong unless you were an economist, preferably with a degree from Chicago or Harvard, but that this was for the elites. You don't feel like when it comes to $25 minimum wage that you have to be an economist for that, and you shouldn't. You don't feel like when it comes to the right to unionize that you have to be an economist, and you shouldn't. But people too often feel like, well, I don't know the details, so how dare I demand breakups? You shouldn't. You know that the concentration is too great, and it's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's job to figure out exactly how to go about breaking that up. But the activism and energy is what we most need now. We got the solutions. The challenge is the energy. And what do you see? What do you see, Jim?
Well, exactly that. And people, as you indicated, across the board are experiencing this. This isn't intellectual. It's not coming down from some political organization to say care about the theft, as you put it, which I think is far better word than antitrust. The theft that is taking place of ordinary people's ability to make a living and to live a life of community and interests that they want to live. That this is being crushed by a handful of people who have too much as Fred Harris used to put it, the great populist senator from Oklahoma, too few people control too much of the money and power. And they use that control to get more for themselves. And from whom? From us. So it continues to take place. And as we talked about earlier in our little discussion here, that people across the board are aware of this because they're living it. The real political spectrum in this country is not right to left. That's theory. The real spectrum is top to bottom. That's your zip code. You know where you live. You know who has power and who doesn't. And that's the new politics that we have to rally, and that I think we can rally. And the elite, again, we've been here before. Franklin Roosevelt, when he was elected in 32, he did not campaign as a New Dealer. There was no New Deal. He was a centrist Democrat who was not going to be Herbert Hoover. And that's all there was to it, pretty much. Right. And people said, okay, we'll buy that. We just did the same thing with Trump. Okay, Joe Biden is not Trump. But then the people, labor, farm activists, women, others, groups, racial groups came in and said, we expect you to do more, not just be not Herbert Hoover. Who are you going to be? And so that brings it down to the real question is, who are we going to be? Are we going to stand up and say we are a self-governing people and we can control the debate ourselves, and we can do it from a grassroots level? It doesn't have to be a national organization, a grassroots level, and go in the face of that power. And in the 1930s, ordinary people, just like you and me, ordinary people, made Roosevelt. He admitted it. He said, I agree with you. Now make me do it. And people did.
Yep.
And that's where the New Deal came from. So much so that Roosevelt, he gutted it up. And you write about, Zephyr, of how he gutted it up later in his administration to realize that there would be no change in America, no little d democracy in America, if there were not a willingness by the Washington government to take on the financial elites in our country.
Yes.
And there was a rebellion that I want to talk to you about, from the financial elites. But talk a little bit about that, Zephyr, about how the people moved Roosevelt.
I mean, the shift in Roosevelt's policy is so striking, because Roosevelt came in as a kind of top-down technocrat. We can fix this from above. We'll work with big business. We'll solve this sort of from above. And two things happened. One is organizing, and the other is reality. The truth is, you can't have a economy that is thriving with when workers and small businesses have a boot on their neck. And what the New Deal's great achievement was big national programs, but done by taking on Wall Street and doing it in a decentralized way, along with labor and small business. And right now we need that same kind of alliance, and we're starting to see it. You're starting to see warehouse workers organizing against Amazon, working with small businesses who basically Amazon steals 30% from, because you can't sell on Amazon without them taking 30% of a cut of every sale. So you're starting to see these new alliances like you saw in the Roosevelt era, but it was organizing and also reality. And we are in tough space economically right now. You are not going to have, Jeff Bezos is not going to fix the inequality problem in this country. It is Biden and Harris taking on Bezos and Wall Street to say, there's this glut of money and power, and it's holding us all back. And we've got to do something about it. So we've been here in the 1870s with concentration of power, and it's been big successes and big failures all along the way. It's a dance back and forth. But
But real change happens. The important thing, Zephyr, is that real change happens when real people stand up. And it's not easy. It's incremental. It's tough. But moments come, as they did in the 1930s. And I think the moment is here now as well.
I think
because, as you indicated, people are recognizing their self-interest, and maybe we don't hate each other, or maybe we've been told we hate each other, and we realize that that's not quite true. And this is, I just want to pitch again.
And Jim, I think if people,
go ahead.
Oh, just that I think sometimes people say, well, what can Biden really do? And I just want you to remember that when Reagan came in, I know it's been a long time, but when Reagan came in, he came in with a series of his sort of California buddies who wanted to do everything they could to reverse the successes of the civil rights movement and deregulate. And they were totally clear that antitrust was at the sort of the bullseye. We need to change antitrust policy. We need to change anti-monopoly policy. They were about concentration of power. And in just a few years, the entire game had changed. His FTC stopped bringing cases that had been brought before. And again, this is a Shakespearean 32nd version, but what a president can do, Biden, the pressure we should be putting on Biden comes from our belief and our knowledge that Biden can do so much in with the agriculture department, has antitrust authority, has the power to unwind some of those mergers and to not allow these abusive contracts. That's right there. That's not checking in with Mitch McConnell. That's not checking in with the Senate. That is saying it's your power and your responsibility, because that's what those laws say. That's what the 1923 Packer and Stockyard Act demands of you, not just allows, but demands of you, and not following through on the full power of the Clayton Act, which after Wilson signed, he took his pen and sent it to the head of the AFL-CIO, who called it a Charter of Liberty, a Magna Carta for labor. Now, I got plenty of issues with Wilson, but if you think, oh, we'll do with our labor issue over here, and we'll separately fight corporate power. No. The more you allow big corporations to combine, it makes it untenable to organize. You try to organize Walmart. You try to organize with Amazon, because they've amassed so much corporate power. They've become union busters in their DNA. So we've got to do these together. Connect union, small business, power against this. There are not that many of them. That's the thing, is we have the power to change this. And as Jim says, this can be a transformational moment.
Absolutely. And connect up with these groups. And again, I'd ask you to check out the Hightower lowdown.org website to sign up for the weekly emails, where we put out information about actions that are taking place and groups that are taking action that you can be a part of. You don't have to invent this yourself. It's already ongoing, and it's ongoing just about in every zip code in America. So you can definitely be a part of it, and you can make it more forceful, and bring power to Washington. That's our goal, I think. Zephyr, I want to.
So if you're in the North Country, go talk to. Yeah, go ahead. I just want to challenge people. Say, oh, you think, okay, well, what if I don't have a local group? I bet most of you haven't asked your Congress member where they are on anti-monopoly. Go ask them. Say, what you going to do? Yeah. What are you going to do to increase enforcement? And I think there's an openness, there's an opportunity here, because what is happening is state attorney generals, who are among the most sensitive creatures to political winds, have realized that antitrust is where it's at. And we have almost all state attorney generals taking on Facebook and Google in some of the biggest antitrust actions in decades. So the energy is there. It's not, you're not getting in at the front end, you're getting in at the middle end, but we need a lot more grassroots action.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. We're using this word antitrust, trust busting, and et cetera. But I like your phrase better. Words matter. We learned that as infants, that you can enhance your personal relationship, or you can explode your personal relationship by certain words that you use. But the words that control our social ethic, our national ethic, have been perverted. You've mentioned it, Zephyr, in terms of Reagan and what they were doing. But I like anti-theft better than antitrust.
Yes.
Because that's what it is. It is the theft of the people's right to control their own destinies, really, and certainly their economic destinies. And it's now it takes place subtly and incrementally. But there's a phrase now that I detest called stakeholders, and this is the new corporate buzzword.
I know, me too.
That we are all
I know.
We are stakeholders, that no longer are corporations just going to represent the shareholders. They also want to represent all stakeholders. And stakeholders mean consumers, means farmers, means small business people, means the environment. So we are no longer citizens. We are stakeholders in the corporate system. And so the corporations control us.
Yeah.
And if we're good stakeholders, we will get some sort of a little reward. Except it turns out that, of course, when push comes to shove, as it always does, as Willie Nelson puts it, that in fact, we had the Business Roundtable earlier this year, or last year, issue this big new manifesto that they were going to represent all stakeholders, no longer just the investors. And then came the pandemic. And all of them abandoned every pledge that they had made in it. And it's all going back to, well, we're going to grab ours, and you people, if you're lucky, you can get a little tidbit out of it. So trickle down doesn't work. We got to have percolate up economics. And that means people taking charge. And that means trust busting or theft busting.
Yes.
So there's where we are.
Well, actually, I got on this. I got on this theft kick after I finished my book, and I realized it's just the narrowest part of the path. There's mountains on either side, and there is Jeff Bezos and Tim Cook and Mark Zuckerberg and Monsanto just standing there saying, hey, I need all your data. I need all your money. I need you to work minimum wage. And then I will let you go through this path. That's theft. It's highway robbery. It's highway robbery. And David Cicilline called it that, the chairman of the House subcommittee. And I'm so glad you say that about stakeholder, because there's this whole post-70s effort to talk about CSR, corporate social responsibility, and stakeholder capitalism. And all of them just miss the big part, which is we allow corporations to exist as a public choice. It starts public. It doesn't start private. It starts public. So we can have any kind of economy we want. We don't have to say, well, what kind of economy would you like to allow us to be stakeholders in? I teach corporate law, and I'm just prepping to teach it. And you see this move towards stakeholder capitalism, and it's both a lie, but it's also insulting, because, as you say, it turns us from citizens who have power over our political lives into beggars.
That is the importance of having Zephyr Teachout all across our country with her work as a law school professor is one thing, her writings, articles and books, and et cetera, her campaigning and her work with local grassroots groups all across the country. We've got the connections to your efforts, Zephyr, up on the screen so people will know how to be a hold of you. And for them to get a hold of power. That's really what we're talking about. We're really talking about democracy, aren't we? I mean, isn't that just the original concept that
I know, I feel
ordinary
like, Bill
folks
Clinton
are supposed to be charged?
Bill Clinton said it's about Bill Clinton said it's the economy, stupid. Yeah, it is the economy, but it's about power, stupid. Before it's about the economy, it's about power.
Economy for whom? That's where we are. Well, thank you all for tuning in to us tonight.
So, Jim,
joining us. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, before we get off, I haven't had a chance to visit with you for a little while. So tell me, what are the real exciting changes that you see happening now? Because it's a tough time. I think people are, so relieved.
I think the big,
but now
the big change that I see in the last decade has been the emergence of fresh, mostly young, mostly people of color movements that understand that we're all in this together, really, not as a corporate phrase, but that we are in fact all in this together, and that we have got to team up, that it can't be just, okay, I'm going to fight for the Green New Deal. Oh, well, I'm going to fight for criminal justice. And well, I'm for the farmers. We're all in the same battle, and we've got to come together, unite. And that's the importance of groups like People's Action, of the Poor People's Campaign, the Highlander Center, and so many other groups that we highlight on this show that most people don't even ever get to hear about. And those are the groups to join, because they understand that this is a structural issue that we're involved in here. This isn't, here's a bad actor over here and there's a bad actor over there and we ought to do this or that, but rather we have to restructure the system because it's rigged against regular people like us. So again, that's why we need Zephyr Teachout on a regular basis. We're going to call you back, Zephyr, to have you continue to counsel with us and teach us. And then we're going to count on you to help us reach out to all kinds of other people, because it is that connection. If we do reach out, if we do connect, we win. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in for the Hightower Lowdown, first show of the new year, 2021. Let's make it our year. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.